Welcome back, everyone, to the Financial Philosophers Podcast. Danny, excited to be here with you today because we are doing our first interview with an old college friend of ours.
Absolutely.
Excited to introduce you to our friend Eamon. He lives in Ireland, and he currently operates a business, and we are here today to interview him and gather some insight, learn from his experience as a business owner, and kind of take us on a journey on how he ended up landing there and some of the personal financial lessons he learned along the way. Eamon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Danny, why don't we start from the top? You and I were discussing. Eamon, we were curious, before we dive into the nitty gritty, what originally just drove you to move from, get away from a traditional job to starting your own business? Was there some type of personal motivation? What was the story behind that?
Yeah, that driving factor.
It was a combination of factors. The main one was an opportunity sort of presented itself at a time when I was very open to receiving alternative opportunities. So I qualified as a teacher, and I was working in a local hospital as a nursing assistant while trying to get a job teaching. And at a couple of, I'm assuming it's the same in America, I was working as a substitute teacher in different places, and it had dragged on for a little while, and I was starting to get fed up with my own circumstances. And well, there's a couple of ways you can have an outlook on life. You can be of the opinion that you are so important to the world that there has been this big meeting and the world has conspired against you, and that you are the center of the world, but you're just not that popular, or you're that insignificant that it doesn't really matter. So I was very much of the opinion that, oh, me, the world's out to get me, and it's not fair that I didn't get this job and I didn't get that. And then somebody sort of introduced me to what I do with selling on Amazon, and I was like, I want to try that and have a look at it, and I was instantly hooked. And then it sort of hit me that there was a couple of things that happened in a very short period of time. I don't want to be in a position where I'm coming into I wasn't even 30 yet. I was coming nearly into my 30s. I'm like, I have no control over my finances. I am solely dependent on kissing up to principals of schools to give me a day's work here and there, and a single day or a single week's work isn't enough. I want a job and I want a career. And it came to the sort of realization of, if I can't sort of get a career within the sector that I want, then I'm just going to cut out my own, set up my own business and be my own boss and do it my way. Not a great person for authority anyway, and not that I've much of a criminal record or stuff like that there, but when somebody says, this is the way we do it and that's the way it has to be, my first question is why? I'm always very inquisitive, and I always sort of question authority. So the whole notion of being able to set up my own business, do it my way, do it how I want, really appealed to me. And it never really started out as a business. It was a sort of a side hustle thing that's incredibly enjoyable, and sort of just spiraled into being a business. It's spiraled now into multiple businesses and teams of staff. And these days I absolutely love it, and these days I'm like, I wonder if I could get my old job back. But I still love when people talk about financial freedom, and there's so much to financial freedom that's just burdens by a different name. But I enjoy the fact that while I still have obligations, I can choose and how and when I deal with them. And like, I've got a lot of personal freedom in my life. I'm by no means a millionaire. I can't just go and jump in my Lambo and go on a holiday tomorrow. I have commitments. I'm a family man, but it has just allowed me to do and experience things that would not have happened if I was still a school teacher. So
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely love it.
Yeah. So you're probably working even harder than you did when you had the regular
100%.
job, but your time is your own, right?
Yeah, which if you were to actually divide my sort of yearly profits by hours worked, a financial advisor might tell you that's probably not a good idea, sir. But it's the opportunities that are being put in front of me and what I can do with it. And I heard a quote. I was talking to somebody the other day about setting up their own business, and they said a quote back to me. They paraphrased my own statement back to me in a way that I'd never heard before. It was like, running your own business, a job is exchanging your time for money. Running your own business is exchanging your efforts for money. And whether that is 1 hour or 1,000 hours, that is what the reward is like. And I was like, that's a really good way of putting it, because some days you put in tons of effort and nothing comes off. And some days you can make one phone call and make $5,000.
Oh, that's
incredible.
And it's like, yeah,
that's
it's
so
effort
cool.
for money.
Yeah.
It's a great way to look at it.
I love that quote. Yeah, I'm going to actually start using that from now on. I'm curious. I mean, I love that your motivation was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there are probably several motivations. Of course, your story highlighted them for why you switched from a regular job to start your own business. But it seems like the big one is really that element of being in control of yourself and not being at the whims of other people. And I'm curious, when you started to feel that freedom, that sense of control, like obviously there's hard work, you admit, several hours you put in, but when you started the business, as it started like a side hustle, you started having fun with it, kind of at what point on the business owner journey did you start to feel like, oh, wow, I really am starting to feel this freedom now? Like, was it from day one, or did it take patience and time? Like, I'm curious to know kind of when that started to materialize.
I suppose it would have been, there wasn't just one sort of eureka moment, but while a lot of businesses suffered greatly over COVID, I was in the right place in the right time for several opportunities that worked out very well for me. And it was funny because I set up the business in 2017, set up a limited company, only doing very small numbers. It was still working 2 jobs, and it was a side hustle in every sense of the word. Did okay. And then in January 2020, I was, okay, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to commit to this. Not going to quit my job, but the way my employment contract is a 0-hour contract, so I could just not go to work for a couple of months, and there was no implications with HR or anything like that. So I was like, going to go all in, do this, and see how it goes. If it doesn't, I've got a safety net. And I decided to go full time in January 2020. COVID hit March 2020. Like, probably wasn't the best time to go out on my own. January or 2020, I was building a house, trying to get married, and trying to go full-time self-employed, which is slightly ambitious to do during a global pandemic.
Just a few things going on.
Just a few things. And I'll let with you, I bossed it. I hit all 3 of them out of hard. But what was a real sort of moment for me to realize the potential of the business was when building the house. Cash flow when you're building a house is always going to be tight. And the amount of money that I was able to pilfer out of my business to use to fund my house was great. And you're saying there were features and actors and different quality materials used that if I had been working a 9-to-5 job, you would have been on a shoestring budget. And every time the builder said, what about this? The answer would be no. Where I've got quite expensive taste. Now, we didn't go crazy on it, but good quality was used, triple glazing, very highly insulated, stuff like that. And it was sort of at that point where I realized the business is affording me these opportunities. And I think a lot of people, when they talk about financial freedom, think it's drinking Mai Tais on a beach in the Caribbean. Whereas holidays are nice, but I think financial freedom is the ability to not have to stress as much over financial decisions. You 100%. Still have to be responsible about it, but it's not when your back's against the wall and you're agreeing to loan shark exchange or interest rates, where it's like, there's an opportunity, the numbers add up, it's within my sort of budget, let's do that. So
absolutely,
yeah,
it's nice. That's something that we speak to a lot, is when you're looking at financial freedom, is retiring to something, right? Not just doing nothing with your time once you achieve that freedom.
Yeah, it's like financial independence. Yeah.
Saying to my wife there an hour ago that I'm starting to get a lot of targeted adverts for becoming a helicopter pilot as a career, and I am genuinely already starting to toy with the notion of when I would get to a level in my business where I don't need to be working on a daily basis, retiring and then go back to taking a job flying helicopters commercially, because I just think that would be the wages wouldn't have to be overly high to get me to do that position.
That's very understandable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a pilot's license or anything, but
I think that's an awesome kind of goal to have on the horizon. Going to what Danny said, retire to something, not from something. You know, I really quickly, Eamon, I just realized, obviously to our listeners, you'll see it in the title that Eamon sells on Amazon. But could you quickly just kind of describe what your business is and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a third-party seller selling on the Amazon platform. So a lot of people are of the misconception if they're buying an item from Amazon that while it's coming in an Amazon Prime box, that it's Amazon as a company has sold it to them. When about 63 to 65% of all items sold on the Amazon platform are sold by third-party sellers, such as myself. So I think the last three people that I said what I do, they were like, "Oh yeah, cool. You drop ship." I'm like, nope, no, I do not drop ship. Everything that I sell, I have bought and paid for. I'm essentially a corner shop. So
Mm.
I buy a variety of products at wholesale prices. I mark them up and I sell them on the Amazon platform, which sounds incredibly simple and straightforward. And from an economic standpoint, it is very straightforward, but it's abuse of a relationship. It really is, because Amazon one day will tell you they love you, and then the next day they'll hold your funds for 2 months. They'll still tell you they love you, but you need to do a couple of things before you're getting your pocket money. And but that's the dynamic that I choose. So yeah, I sell a wide variety of products, from sort of grocery household items to small electronics, different things, and it's really enjoyable. I don't overly care about the products I sell. And I've said that a couple of times, and people go, it's a terrible attitude I have. And I'm like, well, no, I sell a lot of confectionery and stuff, and that mightn't be my personal choice and taste to consume those. But the process of actually selling them, I'm fascinated with. And the logistical side of the entire system, I genuinely get a buzz out of organizing. Which is a bit nerdy, but I love
Hey, you are in the company of nerds.
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. That's awesome. And I want to come back to some of those things. I have some questions about some of the processes and the logistics and whatnot. But taking a step back again, I am very curious. When you had mentioned it's kind of started as a side hustle.
Yeah.
When you started this business, like, was this entirely self-funded, like little by little, or did you end up like taking a business loan and just going full on at it? I mean, how did that kind of play out from start to where you are today?
So not to get too much into sort of ideology, but when I first started out, I had an incredibly limited mindset. Here is me, the lonely little person from Ireland, sort of conditioned to grow up, get a degree, get a nice stable 9 to 5, live a very quiet life, and hopefully die quietly, and somebody maybe remember you someday. So the guy that sort of introduced it to me, when he was starting to tell me all about it, it was 3 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. We're working in a local hospital. He's telling me about all this money he's making. And I was very blunt. I was like, with the greatest respects, it's 3 a.m., you're in work, and you're working quite a menial job doing tasks that we won't mention. If you're making all this money, why are you here? And he was like, because this job has good benefits, and I have young kids and a family, and I can't afford to take the risk. But if you have the nerve to do it, you're young, you're single, you have no commitments, there's brilliant opportunities. And I was like, right, okay, show me how to do it. This is a scam. I'm going to lose my money, but I'll have a go. It's like going to Vegas. You know you can win millions, but realistically, you've already budgeted $500 or $1,000 that you're going to lose in the open games. So it's the same thing. I budgeted 200 quid, and I'm like, we'll see how this plans out. And he sat me down. He showed me the bare basics of what to do, and I started going around the equivalent of Walmart and CVS and scanning items. Bought my first couple of items, boxed them up, shipped them into Amazon, got my first couple of sales, checked the price they sold for, less the fees than what I had paid and the profit I had made. And one of the first items that I have a remembrance of selling was a Corolla colouring in book. So I bought it for £1, I sold it for £8, and I had £4 profit. And I was
incredible.
Just blown away by the fact that I had just 4x my money while sitting at home on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
And it was £4. it's the price of a cup of coffee. It's not going to change the world by any means, but it was what that meant. It was the potential of that. So went again, small amounts. And then after a couple of months, I was like, I don't have enough money to be doing this. This is a cash flow business. I need capital. Let's go. And I went and I borrowed 11 grand from my local credit union. And I said earlier I was building a house. The credit union lent me that money on the pretext that they thought they were giving me a bridging loan while I was waiting on mortgage payments. And I never told them I was using it to set up a business. They charged me quite high interest in comparison to going rates. And as the business grew, my dad was like, you can pay that loan off early and save interest. And my attitude was they will get every single brown penny that they agreed to charge me. For the simple fact that when they set that up, they circumnavigated sort of credit checks and did it all off the books so that it wouldn't affect my mortgage application. And
Wow.
I never forgot how decent they were to me, give me that opportunity, because like if they had put a credit check through for that, that would have affected my mortgage and I wouldn't have got my mortgage through and I wouldn't have this house. So when it came to paying back that loan, I was like, they will get every penny they asked for because they were incredibly decent to me. And then from then on, I know that it might sort of go against the grain of what you guys talk about, but I'm into borrowing more capital. And there was times when that really sort of worked in my favor when, like with any business, there's ebbs and flows. And there's times when maybe the business wasn't doing as well and the finance was able to sort of float the business through that period. Particularly now at the minute, I know we'll come on to it a little bit more, but just been building a second warehouse and 60% of that has been money that has come out of the business. And if it wasn't for sort of financing within the business, it just wouldn't have been fiscally possible. And if I'd have went ahead with it, it would have crippled the business. So yeah,
Absolutely.
once I seen the proof of concept of what my business could do, I then went on to go on, okay, I'm going to commit to this. Like my attitude was it's 11 grand, even if that still goes belly up, it was over 5 years, it was £200 a month. Like even if I just stay in my normal job, I can afford to clear that off. So it wasn't a massive risk to me. But then once I went full time, I took on sizable loans and used them to cash flow the business.
Okay,
Wow,
nice.
that's amazing. And I love the language you used, Eamon, which is proof of concept. Like once you saw the proof of concept, even though there were small dollar amounts, the cost of a coffee, you realized, oh, this could actually work if I just scale my volume and I repeat this. There's a nice profit margin there to be had. And I love that because, I mean, debt, like anything in the financial realm, is a tool. There's nothing inherently wrong with debt. It's has no morals. It's amoral, right? It has no sides. It's nothing. It's just a tool, and how you leverage it and how you use it, whether responsibly or irresponsibly, is likely going to play the biggest factor in how it affects your finances. And I love that you took a calculated risk. I was having a conversation with my wife the other day, and we were getting kind of nerdy and philosophical. And I said something, we're talking about taking risks in life. And we came to the conclusion that there really probably is no way, if you really boil it down to like fundamental principles, there's probably no way to advance in life in like meaningful ways without taking some form of risk, right? Like to live
Completely agreed.
is to have to take risk, right? It's just part of it. But I think part of that is like, how can we use our sensibilities to be smart about it and be calculated. And like I love that. That's why I'm blown away by the proof of concept. Like I think that's right there I'm already seeing a formula for taking calculated risks. It's like step one, test your proof of concept in a super low risk way that's not going to have an impact on you. Repeat that process incrementally until you realize it can work or it cannot work, trial and error. And then once you have enough conviction that, hey, this process works, now we can start dialing that up more and more and more and more. That was just really cool how you walked through that whole thing. It was also very motivating to hear.
It's so true what you say. I've spoke to a lot of Amazon sellers over the years, and a lot of them don't have a true handle on their numbers, which can be quite dangerous when you move up the numbers. But even just young sellers starting out, and I mean young as in experience in the industry, not chronological age, and they'll have started making sales and they can see the proof, but they don't have faith in themselves and being able to do it. And even with help and support, and they're like, I don't see this. Or the flip side of that is they sit and go, right, I've got a business, I'm doing maybe 10, 15,000 a month turnover. Cool. I'm taking 3 weeks to go off on holidays and I'll pick it up when I come back. So what are you doing for that 3 weeks when you're on holidays? Nothing, it'll be fine. Your business isn't that well established that you can afford to just ignore it for 3 weeks and expect it to fund. Like, I brought my laptop on my honeymoon, and my wife understood that. Like, I did Zoom meetings on my honeymoon, and I was like, these need to happen. My wife was like, okay, I understand. And like, I didn't do much work, but it was still there when needed. And I think that's the sort of thing that people don't get. It's having the proof of concept in the business. It's then having the faith in yourself. Like, I've taken a couple of risks recently, and they were risks. And people have asked, is that the right call? And I've been like, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Like, building that second warehouse, like, it cost a lot of money, and I'm like, but I know that gets me to the next level. I know I'm at a glass ceiling right now, and either I stay here and I plateau and I sort of make this level work, which for most people, yes, that's still a viable option to do, and it works. But for me, wanting to get to the next level, you have to step up that next step. And for every level of reward you go up, there's more challenges and risk, and you have to be able to do it. It's okay, you've got sales tax in the US, but in the UK, we have value added tax, which only applies to businesses once they do over 85K turnover in a rolling 12 months. And people come to me and they're like, I've just went VAT registered. My business has got harder. And my response is, congratulations, you've reached the threshold. You were on easy mode. Now you have to step up your game. And every time
Now
you
the
hit a
real
challenge,
work
you have to
starts.
step up your game. And if your business wasn't viable before that, you didn't really have a business to begin with. Step up the game.
That's awesome. On that topic, talking about taking it to the next level, building the second warehouse. So what does that look like, the next level for you? Are you still in transition to it right now, or have you already gotten there? Like, is it just the warehouse? Is it additional employees? Like, what did that look like as you transitioned to that next level?
So the business has went through a lot of dynamic changes in the last year. So we were very much focused on big warehouse, a lot of stock, move the stock hard and fast at low margins. And the problem with that is that unless you're playing with hundreds of millions of pounds, there's always going to be someone higher up the food chain that is getting that stock either cheaper or can produce it at a more competitive price and still make their margin. So I don't sell my own branded products. So if I'm selling a packet of baby wipes, it hasn't got my name on it, it's got a branded name. So if they can buy maybe a couple of lorry loads or truckloads, they can maybe get it at a cheaper price and then be more competitive. So I've started to move away from that, focus down on a couple of niche products that I know that I've got really good supplier relationships with, that I can not control, but receive really good pricing for, and focus on those. And it has actually went the opposite way, whereby we've actually needed less staff because we can be more efficient, because we're working on less products. Like this time last year, I think we had 750 active SKU lines. As of Monday, we had 320.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow, that's
when you're sitting looking at it, you're going, your business is in trouble. You've lost over half your SKU lines. And we're like, no. We've cut the fat and we've just kept the prime stuff that's moving well, that meets our criteria for products that are fast moving, easy to prep, that we can prep rather than prepping 10 of this and 20 of that. We'll prep 500 one item in a row. We had a run go through the shed there 2 weeks ago, and it was 3 different flavors of an item, and we take flavor of each item, and we shrink wrap them together, label them, box them, and ship them out to Amazon. And I know professional prep centers that will try and get about 500 individual units per day per head. So we had 5 in the shed, and for bundles that would go down to about 300. So if we had 5 people, 300, you'd be talking 1,500 units. We were putting out 272 units an hour. We had a unit going out every 13 seconds, which meant what would have been a week's supply of work, we banged out the door in 2 days, and we're sitting going, cup tea.
That's incredible.
Done. So I'm very much of the opinion that, and this maybe comes from a bit of a capitalist and terrible approach, but I think wages are dead money. So on a Friday evening, you pay a man his day's wages. I don't begrudge anybody paying them their wages. You pay somebody their wages on a Friday evening, that money walks out the door. That money is of no use to your business anymore. If you have machinery and you've invested in machinery, Friday night you can still walk in and turn that machine on. It's still there. Now it's going to depreciate an asset, but it's still an asset. Wages aren't an asset to me anyway. The staff are an asset, but not the actual money you pay to them. So we have always very much focused on investing in mechanization wherever possible early on over taking on staff. So I know a lot of our competitors would have a lot more staff, but don't have the heavy equipment that we would have to make the jobs quicker and easier.
Okay. Yeah. So you have that initial larger investment with the machinery, but then that allows you to implement and utilize essentially economies of scale and really bring out efficiencies in your workflow.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And also probably like quality over quantity when it comes to hiring employees, right? You can then focus on, if you need somebody to join the team, you have things in place that instead of hiring what would take 3 employees, maybe you only need to hire 1 now, right? Is that kind of...
Exactly. And from the employee point of view, like we have forklifts, we've shrink wrap machines, we have pallet trucks, we've pallet rack, and we've a lot of different things set up that are for ease. I know, for example, we have like balers for crushing waste cardboard, where I know a lot of other sellers just have big skip bins, and it makes their job a lot easier. So they don't have to sit crushing up boxes, just fire it into the machine that does it all for them. They're not having to start lugging heavy boxes from one end of the building to the other. They've got the equipment there to move them easier. And like, my sort of approach is the easier you can make the job, the more people are going to be inclined to do it to a higher standard, because they're not going to be as tired, they're not going to be fatigued, and it's safer. So I just see all the benefits for mechanizing as much as possible and just utilizing it that way. So we very much focus on that. And now we're at a point where we've got all that equipment. We're focusing down on niche products. We're bringing them in bulk and moving them very quickly. And we've become incredibly efficient, which isn't as great for the staff, because now they can go, we're that good that we don't need the same amount of hours. So, but it's working.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congrats. And there's a phrase for having a niche, or as some people say, niche. I don't know what the correct pronunciation is, but the phrase I hear in the US is niches get riches.
Yeah.
Niches get riches.
Well, you think about it, like I said, it's 750 different product lines. There's times that you could be selling something that I've no idea what it is, and there could be an issue with it, or it could be a seasonal item, and that could very easily get overlooked. Now, we do have staff, and it's their responsibility to monitor and check that. But nobody's ever going to care about your business as much as you. And if you don't know certain fundamentals that's going on, if you're not paying attention to that, you're going to miss opportunities. Whereas now I've started to really focus down on just a couple of products and be like, right, we're going to hit them. Now, one of them's a global brand, and I have spent a considerable deal of money on international phone calls recently just to try and just speaking to customer service. And they're like, well, send us an email and we'll call you back. And I'm like, they're never phoning back. But I know if I could get an account with them, I'd be a millionaire in a couple of years. It would be beautiful. But trying to convince them that they should supply me when they're very much against selling and online marketplaces is part of the game.
Speaking of part of the game, right? And you've laid out really wise and fascinating paths to expanding your business. I mean, your whole story paints that picture really, really well. How you started, you were broader, started to focus, pare things down, trim the fat, like you said, playing that game. Where you currently stand today, Eamon, where do you think the biggest risks lie in your business today? Where do you see the biggest risks that you face that could disrupt your business income or lose income, that sort of thing? And what are you doing to mitigate those risks, to try and circumvent them?
There's a couple of risks in my business, and the easiest thing to do is just hope for the best and ignore the lion in the room. I sell in the Amazon marketplace. They have full control over my business. Like I could get off this call and then realize my business has been shut down over the whim of somebody in a country that I've never met, where they've just been like, "You've breached a violation, you're done." Now that could last a couple of days, or that could last a couple of months. A couple of days is an inconvenience and you can complain about it. A couple of months means I would probably miss finance payments and I'm in a world of trouble. So that is where risk can become reckless very quickly if it's too high. And at the minute, it is too high simply because I've taken so much money out of the business for the second warehouse. And because we did have a couple of pricing issues in November, it really affected our cash flow for Q4. So at the minute, we are currently sitting in a pretty vulnerable position, and I'm not as proud to not to admit that. The mitigating that, the only way you can really mitigate that would be to start selling on another platform. The ease of use of the Amazon platform means that I've got very comfortable dealing on the Amazon platform, spending 7 years on it, very proficient on it. Whereas if I was starting to look at eBay, or in the US, if you're looking at Walmart or Vinted or Etsy, different marketplaces have different sort of approaches. So if I wanted to buy a nice bottle of perfume for my wife, I would look at Amazon. If I wanted to buy tools or something industrial for my garage, I would go to eBay. So to try and move the products that I'm selling from one marketplace to another wouldn't really work. What I have done to mitigate that is I run my own coaching business, and I also recently have started to provide fulfillment facilities for other Amazon sellers. And the fulfillment facilities wasn't done out of a means for me wanting to have another stream of income. It was, as I mentioned, my staff are sitting there twiddling their thumbs going, "We're too good at our job." And I'm like, "Hang on a minute while I get you more work." So we realized we had capacity to take on other people's work, and we've started doing that. And there's now profit in that. So it's a revenue stream that would be like an emergency fund if anything ever went really wrong.
That's great.
Nice.
You are diversifying your income and starting to bring it in from multiple sources, and thereby lowering some of that risk.
I'm not a fan of doing that though. It's nice, but I think people focus and get too hung up on that. You spend any sort of time in sort of e-com space online, and it's multiple streams of income, this, that, and the other. And when you actually boil it down and listen to people talk, all it is shiny object syndrome. They're spinning 9 plates and they're not actually making progress in anything. So while I do have multiple streams of income, some of them are at a much significantly lower level than they could be.
Sure.
Simply because I don't want to give them the bandwidth that they probably require, because my business does very well, does okay. And it's like anything, you start to not pay attention to it, you start to drop the ball, you miss shipments, or you let key lines go out of stock for too long and then you miss your sort of footing. You realize that you maybe dropped 10,000 to chase 200. And while it looked good, you get another source of income and it looks good for an Instagram post, it wasn't an intelligent business move. So I just hammer what works. Stick with what works at Hammered. If you can get other revenue streams, don't take much effort, and they're an extra couple of pounds here and there, cool. But I don't really try and push them too much.
Looks like you're very committed to staying focused on your personal goal. And
that one thing, it works.
Yeah. This is a great, I think, segue into a topic I've been wanting to bring up with you. It's on the topic of capital allocation, investment allocation, personal risk tolerance, things like that. When I was client facing, Eamon, I had worked with some business owners in the past, and I mean full-on business owners like yourself, where that is their life, like that is 100% their focus and attention. And I noticed a very different disposition or attitude towards capital allocation, investment allocation. I remember working with a business owner, and there was a client at an old firm I worked at, and I want to say the business pulled in something like 4 or 5 million in revenue per year. And that was a gross number, but even after all expenses, it was still several $1 million of revenue. And we were their financial planners. And I remember being shocked at how little assets he had outside of the business. Like his net worth, his total net worth was very, very much concentrated in the business. And I was having that memory in my mind. I'm curious to kind of explore your own personal philosophy on that, and whether, on what end of the spectrum do you fall on? Like that story I just provided, do you see yourself in that story, or do you find yourself having a more middle of the road approach? I'm curious to see how your business has affected your personal capital and investment allocation, since from before you started versus where you are today. Could you, walk us through that, your kind of philosophy in that area?
I think before I set up, I was very much work hard, save, that'll do you. Where now I'm very much of like work hard, spend it, you can generate more revenue and profits and personal finances. I don't live an overly lavish lifestyle, so a lot of I pay myself a very good personal wage, but yet when I go looking for the money, I can't find it. And there's a phrase, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, where it's penny wise and pound foolish, which where I won't spend the £3 on a cup of coffee, but I'll spend £2,000 on something for the house. Now, my attitude is that the minute I'm near enough finished building my own house, we're backing that out, finishing that. My next big expenditure will be power around the outside and doing the landscaping, which will be a serious investment. And then what I've also been doing is I've paid several early payments to my mortgage. So my attitude is the earlier I can pay off the mortgage, and use our financial advisors, I'm sure you're going to say, well, your mortgage is the lowest interest rate you'll ever get. Why can't you pay that off early? And I'm sitting going, there's a phrase, I can't remember the guy's name. It's a film with Mark Wahlberg in it. And I'll not use the quote because I don't know if he's want me swearing in this podcast. But I want to be in a position whereby the house is paid off, the business is going well, I'm sitting with money in the bank, and nobody can tell me what to do. As long as I don't murder anybody, we're pretty sweet. Like, I think a month in jail for something would be a nice experience to using an autobiography. So we're pretty. Most things are still options on the table for me. At the minute, with those couple of issues you said, and with the trying to finish off the warehouse, I have put personal finances into the business at the moment, which at the earliest opportunity will be pulled back out. But I was thinking through before I came on here today, and by never really sort of consciously thinking about it, I've always had an emergency fund. I've always had contingency, and my wife sort of laughs is that I'm like a squirrel. We went to sell an old sofa recently, and the person, and about an hour before the person came to lift the sofa, my wife was like, just give it a hoover, clean it up a little bit. I'm like, yeah, sure. And I lifted the cushions off sort of tidied up a bit, and there was an envelope under one of the cushions. And I was like, I thought I spent that. And it was an envelope with £2,000 in it. And my wife was like, how long's that been sitting there? And I'm like, 4, 5 months? I don't know. And she's like, you're an absolute saint. And I was like, yeah, well, I got it. I came in, had the child in my arm at the time. I put it under there and I forgot it was there. And she was like, "How do you forget you've £3,000 sitting under the cushion of the sofa?" I'm like, "I didn't need it."
Oh,
So
thank God she
I
told you to
live a
clean.
pretty humble life that, you know, I'm not trying to say that as a humble brag, I'm a baller that I could throw that sort of money about me. But I knew it was somewhere and I just didn't need to put my hand on it at that time. I'm very much one of stash for a rainy day, which brings on to the sort of point of investments. I have invested in some shares, stock options in the stock market. I've done good on one tech investment, and the rest of them, they're the sort of stories of like email scams. Like I've invested in an Ethiopian gold mine, which didn't work out. So I try to stay away from things like that simply because the same things I said where I'm not paying enough attention to them. And anytime I've invested, it's been on, you know, topical conversations. And then I went, oh, that seems like a good idea.
Mhm.
I'll put some money in it. And it was only a fleeting spike. And I've invested at the high and then stabilized back to the low. So I stay away from that sort of stuff. I do like my whiskey. I invest a wee bit in that, which great consolation prize if the investment doesn't work out. At least you can surround your sorrows. But for me at the minute, what I'm trying to do is just consolidate my own personal position of being mortgage free by 40 and having the business at a stable level where I'm already sort of moving away from the day to day operations of it, where I'm just at a managerial level, which I don't like. I love the hands on aspect, but the managerial level is where it generates the revenue. But I'm
Yep.
also trying to expand into the US marketplace. So I can see the next couple of years me pushing that and then that opening up other investment opportunities, property in America.
That's awesome. I'm going to speak for both Chris and I here and say we have no issue with paying off that mortgage early and think that maintaining a mortgage or paying a mortgage off early varies and is unique to each person that has purchased a home. And everyone needs to evaluate what that means for them. And there is certainly a financial and psychological freedom to be achieved when you pay off that mortgage.
It
And
depends what the mortgage means to you.
true.
So
Yes.
there's people who
Yeah.
will buy a house in newly built developments. It's four walls and a roof, and if they need to move house in 3 years' time, they can sell it, release equity, and move on. I have built this house in family land. Like before I set up the business, the shed that in the first warehouse was there. I always envisioned running a business in it. I had no idea what it would be, but from a kid I thought, wouldn't it be cool to run a business out of there and have people working for me? And if I won the lottery tomorrow, if I won a couple £100 million and money was no longer ever something that I needed to consider, I just tap a card and just instant supply of money, I'd still live in this house. This is my home. I will be carried out of here in a very simple box. I might have, nice houses in the south of France and the west of Ireland and helicopters and flash cars, but this is my home. And for that reason, I want to get to a position as soon as possible that if Amazon goes to the wall, if everything goes per ship, house is paid off, I can start again with a low menial job, look for another opportunity and start over from a position where I don't have to worry about losing the house. And people might go,
Yeah,
well,
that's
then you don't
yeah.
fully believe in yourself and stuff like that. I'm like, there's believing in yourself and being reckless. And it's, to me, I think paying off the mortgage, A, it's a great achievement, and B, it's like save point in the game. You just get to a do-over point.
I absolutely loved that answer. And I want to riff on what Danny said too, just to take it a step further, Eamon. So I absolutely believe in risk management, managing risk within reason. And like, so when you're talking about, you've always had an emergency fund or contingency capital on the side, but putting that aside, you've always had your focus on your business and you're putting extra towards the principal on your mortgage. Like you'll meet a lot of financial advisors who preach the idea that everyone should really just be investing in the stock market, right? Like that's what you should be doing. And it's no surprise that many financial advisors would take that position, because it's also part of their job to gather assets and invest people's money. But Danny and I do not do that, and we are in a nice position where we don't have preconceived notions about what somebody should do one way or the other. I do invest in the stock market, and I absolutely believe in the long-term investing potential of the stock market, but I will be the first one in line to stand behind anybody that has a different investor DNA. Sometimes I've heard that
100%.
phrase online, so I'm going to take that and use it today. Investor DNA, right? Like, we're all different. We all have unique vantage points, unique ways of seeing things. And there are certain things that we do with our money that motivate us so intrinsically to keep doing that thing and increasing our net worth and getting ahead and achieving financial freedom. And some people like the stock market. If that's in their investor DNA, good for them. Like, have at it. Other people, like yourself, like to start a business and put their drive and their energy into that thing. And that appears to be part of your investor DNA. And so, I always love hearing these stories because, we all have a unique investor DNA, and it's on us to discover it and to lean into it and ride that wave of motivation that inspires us to keep it going, while also being prudent and responsible with our fundamental finances. And hearing you say things like you're acknowledging the risk of your business, right? And expanding it. And the more you expand it and you get to that next level, the more risk becomes present. But at the same time, here you are behind the scenes, keeping an emergency fund, having contingency, and also making extra payments towards your mortgage. Those are all things that are risk mitigators. And
it comes back to the sort of psychological points or physiological even, of Maslow hierarchy of needs. So first, cover your basic physiological needs, then your sort of emotional desires, and then your self-actualization of, being who you are and what we are as a person. And my point of view is, okay, I'd love a helicopter, I'd love holiday homes and stuff like that. The very fundamental thing is, I want to provide a safe house and home for my family. And that is the one-to-one fundamental aim. There's very few people in the world, I think, ever set up a business. Okay, there's people that will set up a business because they want to solve a problem. And those people that want to solve a problem will go and they will solve that problem regardless of the financial viability of it. You think about Sam, who wanted to find a cure for the Ebola virus. Okay, you might make money off that down the line, but the humanitarian approach was our first and foremost in that one. Most people that set up a business do it as a means to an end to generate revenue and profit so they can provide a better standard for their family, or that they can have a higher caliber of quality of life. And that's my approach as well. Cover the bases and the essentials for my family. And then once I'm in a position where I have extra revenue and capital, then I'll diversify my financial investments.
So, Eamon, I have one more question for you. When you look back at everything you've done and you're here today, what's one of maybe the biggest mistake or regret you've had that you've learned from on this journey you've been on?
I'm going to cheat. You said there was two. So early on, there was a guy who has his own software, and he run a competition where he gave to Amazon business owners money to sort of say it was 3K challenge. So we give me and another guy $3,000 a piece, 3 months to see what we could turn it into. And I was only so early on, and I had that limited belief in myself. I never touched the money. I set his money in a separate bank account, and I used my own, just in case if I failed, I could still give him back his money, because I didn't want to be publicly shamed as being indebted to him. The second part of that was pretty much towards the end of the 3-month period. He goes, "Yeah, the other guy won. You might want to sit down and check your numbers. You're not making the profit you think you are. You're in a bit of trouble here." And it was a serious slap in the face. And from that, I became very sharp in my numbers. And we're talking £3,000. It wasn't big amounts of money, but it was good to get pulled aside at that point. And I think that if I'd have been told earlier, I'd probably stopped because I realized I wouldn't be making money at that point. So I think for the first 8 to 12 months, I was going gung ho, no idea of numbers, just going sort of on feel, going, this is fun, and not actually making any money. And then we got to the point where, like, right, you're into this a little bit, you're enjoying it, but the numbers have to add up, sit down and pay attention. And like, I always struggled with maths in school, but yeah, since then I've gone very sharp on it. So that would have been the first part. The second part, I would say, on a more overarching point of view, is spending too long focusing on small details that don't matter. So the amount I'll get very tunnel vision on working on solving a problem or a small project, and you go, that was cool, but you were thinking far, far too small. Like, if you had been thinking bigger from the start, it mightn't even be bigger as in revenue or anything like that there, but just on the scale of how you do it. Like, say from start point, when I moved into the warehouse that I'm in now, the plan was to partition off a small corner but use that. And now not only am I using that building, but we have a second one twice the size beside it. And it's, don't limit yourself. If you're going to do something, do double what you thought you needed, because you'll have more room to maneuver. And it has allowed me to have the size and scale within my business that when we do meet challenges, because we're such a size, they're not that big a deal, where a smaller business would have had problems with it. So yeah, think big, don't be afraid to take the risks. Hence why I consolidate my position at a personal level so that I can take the bigger risks at a business level. I like to try and keep them separate.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Eamon, thank you so much for that insight and for talking us through those aspects of your business. Before we let you go, I have one last question for you. And I've seen this done elsewhere. And so this question, I want you to ask a question, and it can be financially related or not, but you are going to ask a question for the next guest to come on.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I'll not do something too out of left field. To what extent do you see Bitcoin and cryptocurrency having negative impacts on the economy in the next 10 years?
Having a negative impact?
Negative impact, yeah.
Okay. I will make a note of that.
Interesting question.
Look forward to the answer.
That's awesome. Wow.
Thanks so much.
This has been a lot of fun, Eamon. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise.
And wish you the best in your future endeavors. And maybe one day our paths will cross again and we can reconvene and see how things are going.
Well, reunion in Dublin in 2025. Hope to see you there.
That sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Eamon. Thanks so much.
Take care. I will make it happen, guys. Thank you.